The rain poured down like needles against my skin as I hurried down the dimly lit street. My worn-out shoes splashed through puddles, soaking my only pair of decent socks. The scent of wet asphalt mixed with the greasy smell from nearby food carts. A familiar cocktail in this part of the city where I'd spent the last 3 years of my life just trying to survive. My apartment building loomed ahead, a crumbling 5-story walk-up with more problems than tenants. The flickering streetlight cast eerie shadows across the entrance, making the peeling paint look like open wounds on the facade. I quickened my pace, clutching my thin jacket tighter around my body. 2 shifts back-to-back at the diner had left me bone-tired, my feet throbbing inside my cheap shoes, but the extra tips would help cover this month's rent. I was fumbling for my keys when I heard it, a soft whimper coming from the narrow alley beside the building. My first instinct was to ignore it. In this neighborhood, curiosity rarely led to anything good. But then I heard it again, unmistakably the cry of a child. "Hello?" I called out softly, taking a hesitant step toward the darkness. No response came, just another muffled sob. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, sweeping the weak beam across the alley. At first, I saw nothing but overflowing trash cans and discarded furniture. Then, a small movement caught my eye. There, huddled behind a soggy cardboard box, was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7 years old, with dark hair plastered to her face from the rain. She wore a private school uniform, navy blue with gold trim, that seemed absurdly out of place in this neighborhood. Her expensive-looking coat was muddied and torn at the sleeve. "Hey there," I said gently, crouching down to her level. "Are you lost?" The girl looked up at me with wide, tear-filled eyes that reflected the beam of my flashlight. There was something hauntingly familiar about her face that I couldn't place. She nodded, her lower lip trembling. "My name's Lena," I told her, keeping my voice soft. "What's yours?" "Sophia," she whispered, her voice carrying the slightest hint of an accent I couldn't quite place. "Sophia Russo." The name sent a chill down my spine that had nothing to do with my rain-soaked clothes. Russo. Everyone in the city knew that name, spoke it in hushed tones. Vincent Russo, the man who controlled everything that happened in the shadows of our city. I'd never seen him, but the stories were enough to make my blood run cold. "Are you hurt, Sophia?" I asked, pushing aside my racing thoughts. She shook her head. "I got separated from my bodyguard at the museum. I tried to find my way home, but I got lost." Fresh tears welled in her eyes. "My papa will be so worried, Papa." Vincent Russo. The connection made my stomach twist into knots. Every instinct told me to call the police, to let them handle this, but something in the little girl's frightened eyes made me reach out my hand instead. "Let's get you somewhere warm, okay? Then we'll figure out how to contact your father." Sophia hesitated for just a moment before placing her small hand in mine. Her fingers were ice cold, and I felt a surge of protectiveness wash over me. I helped her up and led her toward the entrance of my building. "I'm cold," she whispered, her teeth chattering. Without a second thought, I shrugged off my jacket and wrapped it around her shoulders. It was the only decent piece of outerwear I owned, a thrift store find that had seen better days, but it was dry enough on the inside. "Better?" I asked. She nodded, offering a small, grateful smile that transformed her face. In that moment, I could see her father in her, something in the set of her jaw, the intensity of her gaze even through her tears. It was unsettling. My apartment was on the 4th floor, and the elevator had been out of service for months. By the time we reached my door, Sophia's shivers had subsided a little, but her clothes were still soaking wet. "I don't have much," I said apologetically, as I unlocked the door, suddenly aware of just how shabby my life would appear to this child of privilege. My studio apartment was clean, but bare. A futon that doubled as my bed, a small table with 2 mismatched chairs, and a kitchenette with exactly 3 plates and 2 cups. The bathroom was barely big enough to turn around in. Sophia didn't seem to notice or care about the humble surroundings. She stood in the center of the room, looking small and lost in my oversized jacket. "Let me find you something dry to wear," I said, rummaging through my dresser. I pulled out an old t-shirt that would be like a dress on her. "The bathroom's through there. You can change, and I'll make some hot chocolate." While Sophia changed, I heated milk in my only pot, adding the last of my cocoa powder. I found a half-empty bag of marshmallows that weren't too stale and dropped a couple into the mug. The domesticity of the moment struck me as absurd. Here I was, making hot chocolate for the daughter of the most dangerous man in the city. When Sophia emerged from the bathroom, swimming in my t-shirt with her wet uniform clutched in her hands, she looked more like a normal child, and less like the heir to a criminal empire. "Feel better?" I asked, handing her the steaming mug. She nodded, taking a careful sip. "Thank you, Miss Lena." I smiled at her formality. "Just Lena is fine. Now let's call your father, okay?" A shadow of worry crossed her face. My phone was in my coat pocket. I think I dropped it when I was running. "That's okay. We can use mine. Do you know his number?" Sophia recited a number from memory, and with trembling fingers I dialed. Each ring sent my heart rate climbing higher. What would I say to Vincent Russo? How would he react? Would he think I had something to do with his daughter's disappearance? The call connected, and for a moment, there was only silence. "Who is this?" The voice on the other end was quiet, controlled, but with an undercurrent of tension that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "My name is Lena Novak," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "I found Sophia. She's safe with me." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear muffled voices in the background, urgent and agitated. "Where?" Just one word, but it carried the weight of a command. I gave him my address, suddenly regretting bringing Sophia to my apartment. I should have taken her to a police station, somewhere public and safe. "Don't move." The line went dead. I lowered the phone slowly, meeting Sophia's expectant gaze. "Your father is coming," I said, forcing a reassuring smile. "Is he angry?" she asked in a small voice. "I think he's just worried about you." Sophia nodded, sipping her hot chocolate. "He gets scary when he's worried." I swallowed hard, my throat suddenly dry. "I'm sure everything will be fine." As I busied myself hanging Sophia's uniform in the bathroom to dry, I tried to calm the panic rising in my chest. I knew the stories about Vincent Russo, how people who crossed him had a habit of disappearing. I hadn't done anything wrong, I reminded myself. I'd found his daughter and kept her safe. Surely that counted for something. Less than 20 minutes later, the sound of multiple vehicles screeching to a halt outside my building broke the quiet. Sophia perked up, moving to the window. "That's Papa," she said with certainty. Heavy footsteps thundered up the stairwell. I moved instinctively to stand between Sophia and the door, though what protection I thought I could offer against Vincent Russo and his men, I couldn't say. 3 sharp knocks rattled my door on its hinges. "It's unlocked," I called out, my voice barely above a whisper. The door swung open, and the air in the room seemed to vanish. My first thought was that the photographs I'd seen in news articles didn't do Vincent Russo justice. He filled the doorframe, tall and broad-shouldered in a tailored black coat that shed droplets of rain onto my worn carpet. His face was all sharp angles, with a strong jaw darkened by 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes so intensely blue they seemed to glow in the dim light of my apartment. Behind him loomed 2 men in dark suits, their expressions grim and hands hovering near the bulges under their jackets. "Papa!" Sophia darted around me and ran to him. Vincent Russo dropped to one knee, enfolding his daughter in an embrace that spoke of genuine terror and relief. He whispered something in Italian against her hair, his large hand cradling the back of her head with surprising gentleness. When he looked up at me over Sophia's shoulder, the tenderness in his expression evaporated, replaced by something cold and calculating that made my blood freeze in my veins. "Sophia," he said, his voice deceptively soft as he set her aside. "Wait in the car with Marco. Papa needs to speak with Miss Novak." One of the men stepped forward, extending his hand to Sophia. She hesitated, glancing back at me with concern in her eyes. "It's okay," I assured her, though I wasn't at all certain that was true. "I'll see you again sometime." Sophia smiled, a bright, innocent expression that seemed at odds with the tension crackling through the room. "Promise?" Before I could answer, Vincent Russo rose to his full height and nodded to his man. "Take her down, and find her something proper to wear." Only when the door closed behind Sophia did he turn his full attention to me. His gaze traveled slowly around my apartment, taking in the peeling paint, the second-hand furniture, the overall shabbiness that no amount of cleanliness could disguise. I felt exposed, vulnerable, as if he could read my entire life story just by looking at my belongings. "So," he said finally, his voice low and smooth, "you found my daughter." "Yes," I answered, forcing myself to meet his gaze. "In the alley next to the building. She was lost and scared, and you brought her here." It wasn't a question, but an accusation. It was raining. She was cold. "I just wanted to get her somewhere warm while we contacted you." He moved further into the apartment with the fluid grace of a predator, forcing me to step back until my legs hit the edge of the futon. "You know who I am. Everyone knows who you are, Mr. Russo." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And yet you brought my daughter to your home instead of going to the police." I swallowed hard. She trusted me. I didn't want to frighten her more. Vincent Russo's eyes narrowed slightly, his gaze so intense I felt physically pinned in place. "And what do you want for returning her to me?" The question caught me off guard. "Want?" "Your price," he clarified, his tone suggesting this was the most natural question in the world. "For finding Sophia, for keeping her safe." His eyes flickered around my sparse apartment again. "Clearly you could use the money." Heat rushed to my face, embarrassment and indignation warring within me. Did he think I had helped his daughter expecting some kind of reward, that I had calculated what her safe return might be worth to him? "I don't want your money, Mr. Russo," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "I found a lost child and helped her. That's all." Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or disbelief. Everyone wants something. I shook my head. "I just want to know she'll be okay. That's enough for me." He studied me for a long moment, as if trying to solve a particularly challenging puzzle. "What's your full name?" "Lena Novak." "And what do you do, Lena Novak, that leaves you living in a place like this while possessing such charitable instincts?" There was a hint of mockery in his voice that stung, but I refused to show it. "I work at Rosie's Diner on 9th Street. I'm also taking night classes at the community college." "Studying?" "Nursing." Vincent nodded slightly, as if filing away this information for later use. He moved toward the small table where Sophia's mug of hot chocolate still sat, half empty. With 2 fingers, he turned it slowly, examining the chipped rim and the faded cartoon character printed on its side. "You gave her hot chocolate," he remarked. "She was cold. And this?" He gestured to the oversized t-shirt he'd found her wearing. Her uniform was soaked through. I didn't want her to catch a chill. He fell silent again, his presence filling my tiny apartment until it felt hard to breathe. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its edge. "My daughter has been missing for 3 hours and 17 minutes. Do you understand what that is like, Miss Novak? To have the most precious thing in your world simply vanish?" I thought of my younger sister, Mia, who I'd practically raised after our parents died. The constant worry when she was out of my sight, the panic when she was late coming home. "I can imagine," I said softly. Vincent's gaze sharpened. "No, you cannot, because Sophia is not just any child. There are people who would use her to get to me. People who would hurt her without hesitation. She said she got separated from her bodyguard at the museum. An inexcusable failure that has already been addressed." The coldness in his voice made me shudder, thinking of what addressed might mean in his world. He reached inside his coat and withdrew an envelope, which he placed on my table. "For your assistance. I told you I don't want money, and I don't leave debts unpaid." His tone made it clear this wasn't up for discussion. "Consider it compensation for your time and the use of your facilities." I wanted to refuse, to push the envelope back toward him, but something in his expression stopped me. This was a man unaccustomed to being denied anything. "Thank you," I said instead, though I had no intention of opening the envelope. Vincent buttoned his coat, preparing to leave, but paused as his gaze fell on a framed photograph on my dresser, the only personal item visible in the apartment. He moved toward it with that same predatory grace. "Family?" he asked, picking up the photo of Mia and me at her high school graduation 2 years ago. "My sister." The single word felt like revealing too much, but I couldn't bring myself to lie. "Where is she now?" "College. Scholarship." I kept my answers clipped, suddenly desperate for him to leave, to take his overwhelming presence out of my carefully constructed life. He set the photo down precisely where it had been, but the damage was done. He had seen a piece of me, had touched the frame that held one of my few treasures. "You've done me a service tonight, Lena Novak," he said as he moved toward the door. "I won't forget it." Those words, spoken so casually, sent a chill down my spine. Being remembered by Vincent Russo didn't strike me as a blessing. "There's no need," I began, but he cut me off with a raised hand. "My daughter is fond of you already. She has few female influences in her life." He paused, seeming to choose his next words carefully. "She would like to see you again." It wasn't a request, but it wasn't quite a command either. Something in between, delivered with the expectation of compliance. "I work most days," I said, unsure how to respond. "I'm aware of your schedule," of course he was. In the time it had taken him to arrive, he'd probably learned everything there was to know about me. "A car will come for you on Sunday. Your day off." Before I could formulate a response, he was gone, leaving behind nothing but the envelope on my table and the lingering scent of expensive cologne mixed with rain. I sank onto the edge of my futon, legs suddenly too weak to hold me. What had just happened? Had I really invited Vincent Russo into my home? Had he just ordered me to spend time with his daughter? With trembling fingers, I reached for the envelope. It was thick, made of heavy cream-colored paper that probably cost more than I made in a day. Inside, I found a stack of crisp $100 bills. More money than I had seen in one place in my entire life. My first instinct was to run after him, to return his money and make it clear I wanted nothing to do with him or his world. But the practical part of me, the part that counted pennies and worried about Mia's textbook costs and my own tuition, hesitated. This money could pay my rent for months, could help with Mia's expenses, could give me a tiny cushion against the constant financial anxiety that had been my companion for years. I tucked the envelope into my dresser drawer, beneath a stack of carefully folded t-shirts, telling myself I would decide what to do with it later. Sleep eluded me that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Vincent Russo's penetrating gaze, felt the weight of his presence in my small apartment. I kept replaying our conversation, wondering if I had made a terrible mistake by helping Sophia, by allowing myself to register on the radar of a man like him. Sunday arrived with unseasonable sunshine that seemed at odds with my sense of foreboding. I had spent the intervening days in a state of nervous anticipation, jumping at every car door that slammed outside my building, tensing whenever the diner door opened during my shifts. At precisely 10 o'clock, a sleek black car with tinted windows pulled up in front of my building. The driver, a stone-faced man in a dark suit, didn't speak as he held the door open for me. The interior was butter-soft leather, the air inside cool and scented with the same cologne I remembered from that night, but Vincent Russo wasn't inside. Instead, Sophia sat on the back seat, her face lighting up when she saw me. She wore a simple sundress, and her dark hair was pulled back with a ribbon, making her look like any ordinary little girl, rather than the daughter of one of the most feared men in the city. "Lena, you came!" she exclaimed, as if there had been any possibility I might refuse her father's summons. "I promised, didn't I?" I smiled, settling beside her. "Papa said you might be busy," she confided, leaning closer. "But I told him you'd come because you're my friend now." Friend. Such a simple word, laden with complications I couldn't begin to explain to this child. "Where are we going?" I asked as the car pulled smoothly away from the curb. "To our house. Papa said I could show you my room and we could have lunch in the garden." I tried to mask my surprise. I had assumed we would be going to a park, or perhaps a restaurant, somewhere public. The idea of entering Vincent Russo's private domain sent a flutter of anxiety through my stomach. "That sounds lovely," I managed. The city fell away as we drove, buildings growing more spaced out, yards getting larger, until we were passing through an area of sprawling estates hidden behind high walls and security gates. The car turned down a tree-lined drive and approached a set of imposing iron gates that opened soundlessly as we approached. The house, mansion, really, sat at the end of a long driveway, all stone and columns and perfectly manicured gardens. It looked like something from a magazine. Impossibly grand and untouchable. Men in dark suits were positioned strategically around the property, their attentive gazes following our car as it circled a central fountain and came to a stop at the front entrance. "Come on!" Sophia tugged at my hand as soon as the driver opened our door. "I want to show you everything." The interior of the house was even more impressive than the exterior. Marble floors, soaring ceilings, artwork that I suspected was original and priceless. Sophia led me through rooms that were elegantly furnished but oddly impersonal, like a museum where people happened to live. Her bedroom, however, was a different story. Here was color and life, stuffed animals arranged on a canopied bed, books spilling from shelves, a dollhouse that was an exact replica of the very mansion we stood in. "This is Luna," Sophia said, handing me a well-loved stuffed rabbit. "And this is Stella, and this is Marco. I named him after my bodyguard because he keeps me safe when I sleep." I smiled, settling onto a window seat as she showed me treasure after treasure, her excitement palpable. There was something both heartwarming and heartbreaking about watching her, this child surrounded by luxury but so hungry for simple attention. We were deep in a discussion about her favorite books when a soft knock came at the open door. I looked up, expecting a maid or perhaps the stone-faced driver, but instead found Vincent Russo himself leaning against the doorframe. He had traded his dark coat for a light blue button-down shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms dusted with dark hair. The more casual attire did nothing to diminish his commanding presence. "Papa!" Sophia jumped up and ran to him. He caught her with practiced ease, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. "Are you being a good hostess, Piccola?" he asked, his voice gentler than I had heard it before. "Yes. I showed Lena all my favorite things, and we're going to have lunch in the garden, right? If that's what you want." He set her down, and finally acknowledged me with a slight nod. "Miss Novak." "Mr. Russo." I stood awkwardly, suddenly aware of my simple sundress and sandals from a discount store, so out of place in this palace of wealth. "Lunch will be ready soon," he said, his eyes not leaving my face. "Perhaps you'd like to wash up first. Sophia can show you to the guest bathroom." It was a dismissal, I realized. A moment for him to speak with his daughter alone, perhaps to gauge what I had said to her, what influence I might be having. The bathroom Sophia led me to was larger than my entire apartment, with marble countertops and gold fixtures. I stared at my reflection in the oversized mirror, cheeks flushed, eyes wide and uncertain. What was I doing here, in this house, with these people? I was so far out of my depth, I couldn't even see the surface. "Pull yourself together," I whispered to my reflection. "It's just lunch." But as I rejoined Sophia in the hallway and followed her toward the garden, I knew it wasn't just lunch. It was a step into a world I didn't understand, controlled by a man whose motives I couldn't fathom. The garden was a masterpiece of landscape design, with perfectly trimmed hedges, burbling fountains, and an explosion of flowers that perfumed the air. A table had been set beneath a vine-covered pergola, shaded from the midday sun, and set with china and crystal that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Vincent Russo stood as we approached, pulling out a chair for his daughter, and then, to my surprise, for me as well. His fingers brushed my shoulder as I sat, the brief contact sending an inexplicable shiver down my spine. "I hope you don't mind eating outside," he said, taking his seat across from me. "Sophia prefers it. It's beautiful," I admitted, because it was. A server appeared, pouring water into crystal glasses and presenting a basket of bread that smelled divine. Sophia chattered happily about her plans to show me her treehouse after lunch, her collection of snow globes from around the world, the kittens that had been born in the stable last week. Throughout it all, Vincent watched me with that same intense gaze, as if trying to see past my careful smiles and polite responses to whatever secrets he imagined I might be hiding. "And what do you think of our home, Miss Novak?" he asked during a brief lull in Sophia's monologue. I searched for the right word, one that wouldn't sound either fawning or critical. "Impressive." A hint of amusement flickered in his eyes. "That's a diplomatic answer." Sophia looked between us, her fork paused midway to her mouth. "Lena's apartment is small, Papa, but it's very cozy. She made me hot chocolate with marshmallows." Vincent's gaze softened when he looked at his daughter. Did she now? Uh-huh. And she gave me her special t-shirt to wear when my uniform was wet. I felt heat creep into my cheeks as Vincent's attention returned to me, more appraising now. Your generosity seems to know no bounds, Miss Novak. Anyone would have done the same, I murmured, focusing on my plate. I disagree. His voice was low, almost intimate. Most people in this city would have seen an opportunity in finding my daughter. You saw only a child who needed help. Before I could respond, Sophia launched into another story, this one about her school project on butterflies. The meal progressed with Vincent asking occasional questions about my studies, my work, surface-level inquiries that nonetheless felt like a careful interrogation. I answered honestly but briefly, increasingly aware that this lunch was serving some purpose beyond simple gratitude for helping his daughter. As promised, after lunch, Sophia led me on a tour of her favorite spots on the estate. Vincent excused himself, mentioning business calls, but I could feel the weight of his attention following us as we explored the grounds. Men in dark suits were always visible at a distance, their presence a constant reminder of whose world I had entered. The afternoon slipped away in a haze of Sophia's enthusiasm. She was a bright, curious child who seemed genuinely happy to have someone new to share her world with. By the time the shadows began to lengthen across the manicured lawn, I found myself genuinely fond of her. I think it's time for Lena to go home, Piccola. Vincent's voice came from behind us as we sat by the koi pond, trailing our fingers in the cool water. Sophia's face fell, but we were going to read my new book. Another time, perhaps. His tone was gentle but firm. Promise you'll come back? Sophia asked, turning to me with pleading eyes. I glanced up at Vincent, uncertain how to respond. This had been a command performance, not the beginning of a standing arrangement. To my surprise, he gave a slight nod. If your father invites me, I'd love to visit again, I told her carefully. She beamed, throwing her arms around my neck in a spontaneous hug that caught me off guard. He will. I'll make him. She whispered this last part in my ear, as if sharing a great secret. Vincent cleared his throat. Go find Maria and get ready for your piano lesson. I'll see Miss Novak out. Sophia squeezed me once more before running toward the house, her dark hair streaming behind her. Left alone with Vincent, I felt that same tension return, the air between us charged with something I couldn't name. You're good with her, he remarked as we walked slowly back toward the house. She's easy to be good with. She's a wonderful child. Yes. Pride colored his voice. She is the one pure thing in my life. The admission surprised me. It seemed too personal, too vulnerable for a man like him. She misses her mother, he continued, his gaze fixed on some point in the distance. I'm sorry. Is she dead? No, merely absent by choice. His tone hardened. Sophia was 4 when her mother decided our life no longer suited her ambitions. She's in Milan now, I believe, with a fashion designer. I didn't know how to respond to this unexpected glimpse into his private pain, so I said nothing, letting the silence stretch between us. Sophia has many people who care for her, Vincent continued after a moment. Nannies, tutors, security, but she lacks a woman's influence, a mother figure. I felt a prickle of unease at the direction of this conversation. I'm hardly qualified for that role, Mr. Russo. And yet she's taken to you. He stopped walking, turning to face me fully. Children have instincts about people. Sophia sensed something in you, something genuine. I just treated her like a person, not a possession. His eyes narrowed slightly. Is that what you think I do? Treat her like a possession? I didn't mean... You did. He took a step closer, close enough that I could smell the subtle scent of his cologne. You see me as what? A criminal who happens to have a daughter? A monster playing at being a father? I don't know you, I said quietly. I only know what people say. And what do they say, Lena Novak? His voice had dropped to nearly a whisper. That you're dangerous, that people who cross you disappear. A humorless smile touched his lips. Yet here you stand, telling me to my face that I treat my daughter like a possession. That's not what I broke off, frustration rising. Look, Mr. Russo, I don't know what you want from me. I found Sophia by chance. I helped her because she needed help. There's nothing more to it than that. What if I want there to be more? The question hung in the air between us. laden with implications I wasn't sure I understood. More what? Sophia needs someone she can trust. Someone outside of my world who sees her for who she is, not what her name represents. I shook my head, taking a step back. I'm not qualified to be anyone's role model. I'm just trying to get through nursing school and keep a roof over my head. And yet you gave your only jacket to a stranger. You shared your last hot chocolate with a lost child. His gaze was uncomfortably perceptive. You care about people, Miss Novak. That is a rare quality. Before I could formulate a response, he reached into his pocket and withdrew a small card. My private number, he said, pressing it into my palm. If you ever need anything at all, you call this number. I won't need anything, I insisted, though I didn't hand the card back. Everyone needs something eventually. He nodded toward the front of the house, where the same black car that had brought me was now waiting. The driver will take you home. As I turned to go, his hand caught my arm, the touch sending an unexpected jolt of warmth through me. Sunday, he said. Sophia has a riding lesson at 10. She would be pleased if you attended. It wasn't a request. It wasn't quite a command. It was something in between, delivered with the quiet confidence of a man who knew his wishes would be granted. I'll try, I said, the closest I could come to an assertion of independence. The corner of his mouth lifted in what might have been amusement. The car will come at 9:30. The week that followed felt surreal. I went through the motions of my normal life, serving plates of eggs and pancakes at the diner, attending my evening classes, studying late into the night, but my mind kept drifting back to that Sunday. To Sophia's bright smiles and innocent chatter, to Vincent's penetrating gaze and cryptic words. I told myself I wouldn't go back, that I would call the number on the card Vincent had given me and politely decline his invitation, that I would extricate myself from whatever game he was playing before I became a pawn in it. But when Sunday morning arrived, I found myself waiting outside my building at 9:30, a small gift for Sophia tucked under my arm. A book I had loved at her age, purchased from a second-hand bookstore with a portion of the money Vincent had given me. The same car arrived, right on time. The same silent driver held the door. But this time, the back seat was empty. We drove through the city in silence, the privacy glass between the front and back seats raised. I watched the landscape transform from urban grit to suburban comfort to rural opulence, anxiety building with each mile. When we arrived at the Russo estate, I was directed not toward the main house but to a stable complex that looked nicer than most homes. The scent of hay and horses filled the air as I followed a stone path toward a fenced arena where I could see Sophia atop a gleaming chestnut pony, her face a study in concentration as she guided the animal in a circle. Vincent stood at the fence, his posture relaxed but attentive, dressed more casually than I had seen him before in dark jeans and a simple white shirt. The morning sun caught in his dark hair, highlighting threads of silver at his temples I hadn't noticed before. He turned as I approached, and something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, that I had actually come. Miss Novak. He inclined his head slightly. Sophia will be pleased. I said I would try, I reminded him, stopping a few feet away. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. So you did. Sophia spotted me then, her face lighting up with delight. She waved enthusiastically, causing her pony to prance sideways in response to her shifted weight. Eyes forward, Sophia, called a stern-looking woman in riding clothes. Mind your posture. My daughter, Vincent said, his gaze returning to the arena, is determined to master everything she attempts, sometimes to the frustration of her instructors. I heard the pride in his voice, saw the softness in his expression as he watched his daughter. For a moment he wasn't Vincent Russo, feared crime lord, but simply a father admiring his child. She reminds me of my sister, I found myself saying. Mia has that same determination. The sister in college, he remarked, proving he remembered every detail of our brief conversation in my apartment. Yes, she's studying environmental science. She wants to save the world. A noble ambition. He glanced at me. And you? You wish to be a nurse, to save lives on a smaller scale. The way he put it made my aspirations sound equally worthwhile, which wasn't what I had expected. I just want to help people, I said simply. Vincent nodded, as if this confirmed something he had already concluded about me. A rare quality, as I said. We watched in companionable silence as Sophia completed her lesson, guiding her pony over a series of small jumps with increasing confidence. When the instructor finally signaled the end of the session, she trotted over to the fence, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "Did you see me, Lena? Did you see how high we jumped? You were amazing," I told her honestly. She beamed, then turned to her father. "Papa, can Lena help me brush Maple down, please?" Vincent looked to me, one eyebrow raised in silent inquiry. "I'd like that," I said, finding to my surprise that it was true, if it's allowed. Sophia's riding instructor approached, skepticism written across her features. "Sir, Maple needs proper care. I'm sure Miss Novak is quite capable of following Sophia's instructions," Vincent interrupted smoothly. "Isn't that right?" "I'm a quick learner," I assured the instructor, whose pinched expression suggested she remained unconvinced. Vincent's hand settled briefly on my shoulder as I passed through the gate into the arena, a warm, solid pressure that lingered even after he withdrew it. "I have some calls to make," he said. "Join me for lunch when you've finished here." Again, not quite a request, not quite a command. The next hour passed in a blur of Sophia's enthusiastic instructions and the therapeutic rhythm of brushing the patient pony. Sophia chattered away, telling me about her school, her friends, carefully vetted by her father's security team, I gathered, and her dreams of becoming an Olympic equestrian. There was something refreshingly normal about her, despite the extraordinary circumstances of her life. "Papa says you're studying to be a nurse," she said, as we led Maple back to his stall. "That's right. I have about a year left before I finish my degree." "Why a nurse? Why not a doctor?" I smiled at her directness. "Nurses spend more time with patients. They're the ones who make people feel better day to day. Doctors are important, but nurses are the heart of healthcare." Sophia nodded thoughtfully, "Like how Papa is important, but Marco and the others take care of me every day." The comparison between her father's security detail and nursing wasn't one I would have made, but I understood her point of reference. "Something like that," I agreed. After ensuring Maple was comfortable in his stall with fresh hay and water, we made our way back toward the main house. Sophia's small hand slipped into mine as we walked, a gesture of trust that made my heart squeeze. "I'm glad Papa found you," she said suddenly. "Actually, I found you, remember?" She giggled. "I know, but Papa says things happen for a reason, that it wasn't an accident I got lost and you found me. I wasn't sure how to respond to that." The idea that Vincent Russo saw some greater purpose in our meeting unsettled me. We found Vincent in the same garden where we'd had lunch the previous Sunday, this time seated at a glass-topped table reviewing documents spread before him. He looked up as we approached, his eyes lingering on our joined hands before rising to my face. "Successful grooming session?" he asked, gathering the papers into a neat stack. "Lena's a natural," Sophia declared. "Maple loved her." "Did he now?" Vincent's gaze was amused. "Go wash up, Piccola. Lunch will be here shortly." When Sophia had disappeared into the house, Vincent gestured for me to take the seat across from him. "Thank you for indulging her. Horses are her latest passion. She's good with him. Patient. A quality she must have inherited from her mother's side," he remarked dryly. "Patience has never been my forte." I found myself smiling at the unexpected self-deprecation. "I wouldn't have guessed that about you." "No?" He leaned back in his chair, studying me. "What would you have guessed about me, Lena Novak?" The informal use of my first name wasn't lost on me. "I wouldn't presume to guess anything about you, Mr. Russo." "Vincent," he corrected. "After horse grooming and hot chocolate, I think we're beyond formalities." I hesitated, uncomfortable with the implied familiarity but unwilling to challenge him directly. "Vincent," I conceded. His smile was unexpectedly warm, transforming his face from intimidating to almost approachable. "Now, what did you bring my daughter?" "I noticed the package when you arrived." "Just a book. One I loved when I was her age." "Thoughtful," he observed. "Sophia treasures books above most other gifts." "What was it?" "The Secret Garden. It's about a lonely little girl who discovers a hidden garden and brings it back to life. It's about healing, really." Finding beauty in unexpected places. Vincent nodded slowly. A message you believe Sophia needs to hear? No, not at all. She seems very happy and well-adjusted. It's just a good story. You're uncomfortable here, he said abruptly, changing tack. In my home, around me. The directness of the observation caught me off guard. This isn't my world, I admitted. And what is your world, Lena? Double shifts at the diner, student loans, cramming for exams after midnight, counting pennies to make rent, I shrugged. Not writing lessons and marble foyers and staff. A harder world than Sophia's, he acknowledged. Than most people's. I'm not complaining. I'm making my way. Yes, I've looked into your background. At my startled expression, he continued unapologetically. Your parents died when you were 19. Car accident. You gave up a scholarship to care for your sister. Worked 3 jobs to keep her in school. Put your own education on hold until she was settled in college. Hearing my life summarized so clinically by this man made me feel exposed, vulnerable. Is there anything you don't know about me? Many things, I'm sure. He leaned forward slightly. But I know enough to recognize someone who sacrifices their own interests for those they care about. Someone with integrity. Is that why I'm here? Because I passed some kind of character assessment? Vincent's eyes narrowed slightly. You're here because my daughter likes you. Because you were kind to her when you had no obligation to be. Because she has precious few female role models who see her as Sophia, not as Vincent Russo's daughter. I'm not a role model, I insisted. I'm barely keeping my own life together. Yet here you are, studying to help others, giving up your one day off to make a child happy. His voice softened. Do not underestimate your worth, Lena. Something in his tone made my chest tighten. Before I could formulate a response, Sophia bounded back into the garden, freshly washed and bubbling with excitement about the book I'd brought her. Lunch was a more relaxed affair than the previous week, with Sophia dominating the conversation. Vincent watched us interact with an unreadable expression, occasionally adding a comment or asking a question, but mostly content to observe. After we ate, Sophia persuaded us both to play a board game on the terrace, a complex strategy game that she explained with the confidence of an expert. To my surprise, Vincent agreed readily, setting aside what I assumed were important business matters to spend an hour moving game pieces around a board at his daughter's behest. Even more surprising was how competitive he became, his eyes lighting with challenge when I managed a particularly clever move that put his pieces in jeopardy. Sophia giggled at his exaggerated expressions of dismay, clearly accustomed to this playful side of him that seemed at odds with his fearsome reputation. Papa hates losing, she confided in a stage whisper. Even to me. I don't hate losing, Vincent corrected. I simply prefer winning. Same thing, Sophia and I said in unison, then looked at each other in surprise before bursting into laughter. Vincent's expression as he watched us was complex. Pleasure mingled with something that might have been wistfulness. For a moment, I could imagine this was just a normal Sunday afternoon with a normal family. The weight of who Vincent was, and what he did suspended in this bubble of domestic tranquility. The illusion shattered when a man in a dark suit appeared at the edge of the terrace, his face expressionless as he caught Vincent's eye and gave a slight nod. Sophia, Vincent said, his voice returning to its usual controlled tone. Why don't you show Lena the library? I need to speak with Antonio for a moment. Sophia bounded to her feet, eager to share another of her favorite places. As she pulled me toward the house, I glanced back to see Vincent's face transformed. All warmth vanished as he listened to whatever message his man was delivering. The contrast was jarring, the doting father replaced in an instant by the man whose name was whispered in fear throughout the city. The Russo library was as impressive as the rest of the house, 2 stories of floor-to-ceiling bookshelves accessed by a rolling ladder, comfortable reading nooks tucked into window alcoves, the scent of leather and paper permeating the air. Sophia showed me her favorite volumes, proudly pointing out the classics she'd already read despite her young age. We were deep in a discussion of fairy tales when Vincent appeared in the doorway, his expression once again carefully composed. Sophia, Maria needs you for your piano practice. But Lena and I... Now, Sophia. His tone brooked no argument. She pouted but complied. giving me a quick hug before leaving the room. Vincent waited until her footsteps had faded down the hallway before approaching where I stood by one of the tall windows. I apologize, but I need to cut our visit short today. Something has come up that requires my attention. Of course, I said, relieved in a way to be leaving early. The longer I stayed in this house, the more confused I became about my role here. I'll just say goodbye to Sophia. That won't be necessary. He moved closer, his voice lowering. I've arranged for a car to take you home. The abruptness of the dismissal stung more than it should have. Did I do something wrong? Vincent's expression softened slightly. No. This is business. Nothing to do with you, but there was something in his eyes, a tension that hadn't been there before. Whatever message his man had delivered had changed something. Will there be another visit? I asked, unsure why I was even asking. Vincent studied me for a long moment. Do you want there to be? The question caught me off guard. Did I? Part of me wanted to run as far from Vincent Russo and his world as possible. But another part, a part I was increasingly uncomfortable acknowledging, had grown fond of Sophia, had started to look forward to these strange Sundays in a world so different from my own. Sophia would be disappointed if I didn't come back, I said, evading a direct answer. A smile touched his lips, as if he recognized the evasion for what it was. Yes, she would. He reached out, his fingers lightly brushing a strand of hair from my face. The casual intimacy of the gesture made my breath catch, as would I. Before I could process that statement, he stepped back, his expression closing off again. The car is waiting. I'll be in touch about next Sunday. The drive back to my apartment passed in a blur of confusion. What was I doing? Getting involved with the Russo family. What did Vincent want from me? Why did I keep saying yes when every instinct should be screaming for me to run? When the car stopped outside my building, the driver handed me an envelope similar to the one Vincent had left that first night. I tried to refuse, but the man simply placed it on the seat beside me and returned to the front of the car, making it clear he wouldn't leave until I took it. Inside my apartment, I placed the unopened envelope on my small table and stared at it. More money I didn't ask for, didn't want, but desperately needed. The ethical thing would be to return it. The practical thing would be to use it for next semester's tuition. I was still deliberating when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Thank you for today. Sophia is already planning next week's activities. Rest well. V. The next 3 Sundays followed a similar pattern. The silent car, Sophia's exuberant welcome, Vincent's penetrating gaze that seemed to see more than I wanted to reveal. Each visit, I told myself, would be my last. Each week, I found myself waiting at the curb when the black car arrived. Sophia bloomed under my attention, showing me every corner of her world with unrestrained enthusiasm. We baked cookies in the massive kitchen, planted flowers in her personal garden plot, read books side by side in the library. I helped her with a school project, taught her how to braid her hair, listened to her practice piano pieces with serious concentration. And Vincent watched, always watching, his expression unreadable yet somehow approving. He kept his distance most of the time, joining us for meals or the occasional game, but otherwise allowing Sophia and me to form our own bond. Occasionally, I would look up to find him observing us from a doorway or across the garden, his intensity making my skin prickle with awareness. The texts continued, brief messages that arrived in the evenings, ostensibly about arrangements for the next visit, but increasingly personal. Comments about Sophia's progress in school, questions about my studies. Once, after I mentioned an upcoming exam, a single message: "You will excel." I tried not to analyze why those 3 words from him made me study harder that night than I had for any test in my life. The envelopes appeared after each visit. Always the same cream-colored paper. Always left somewhere I would find it after Vincent had excused himself. I used the money for tuition, for Mia's textbooks, for a desperately needed laptop to replace my dying one. I told myself I was providing a service, being a friend to a lonely child, and the compensation was justified. I ignored the voice that whispered there was more to it than that. On the 4th Sunday, something shifted. I arrived to find Sophia unusually subdued, picking at her breakfast on the terrace rather than racing to greet me as she usually did. "What's wrong?" I asked, settling into the chair beside her. She shrugged, pushing scrambled eggs around her plate. "Daddy had a bad night." My eyes darted to Vincent, who sat at the far end of the table, his attention fixed on the tablet in his hand. A darkening bruise shadowed his jawline, and his knuckles were raw and scabbed. "A disagreement with a business associate," he said without looking up, his voice neutral despite the evidence of violence on his body. Sophia's bottom lip trembled slightly. "They were shouting. I heard them." Vincent's head snapped up, his gaze sharp with concern. "You were supposed to be asleep, Sophia." I got thirsty. She stared down at her plate. I heard the shouting and then the loud noise. Like a car backfiring, a silent conversation passed between Vincent and me over his daughter's bowed head, his expression warning, mine questioning. A loud noise like a car backfiring. A gunshot. Vincent's bruised face. The implications formed a knot in my stomach. "Sometimes adults disagree," I said carefully, placing a gentle hand over Sophia's. "But your father is fine. See? He's right here." Vincent's face softened slightly at my attempt to reassure his daughter. "Perhaps you could show Lena your art project today," he suggested. "The one you've been working on all week." Sophia brightened a little. "It's a surprise. For you," she told me. "I can't wait to see it." After breakfast, Sophia led me to her art room, a sunlit space filled with supplies that would make a professional artist envious. While she arranged her project, still hidden under a cloth, Vincent appeared in the doorway, gesturing for me to join him in the hallway. "Thank you," he said quietly when we were out of Sophia's earshot. "For not asking questions, for helping normalize things for her." "What happened to your face?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His expression hardened. "Nothing that concerns you. It concerns Sophia. She heard a gunshot, Vincent. She heard a car backfiring," he corrected sharply. Then, seeing my expression, he sighed. "Some business dealings become complicated. It's been handled." "Handled," I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "Is that what you call it? What would you have me call it?" His voice was dangerously soft. "Should I explain to my 6-year-old daughter the realities of my world? Should I tell her there are people who would hurt her to get to me? That sometimes I must act first to protect what's mine? Of course not, but there is no but, Lena." He moved closer, his presence suddenly intimidating in the narrow hallway. "My priority is Sophia's safety and happiness. Always. Everything else is secondary." I should have backed down, should have nodded and returned to Sophia's art room. Instead, I found myself saying, "Including the law? Including basic human decency?" Vincent's eyes narrowed, a muscle in his jaw twitching. "You judge what you don't understand. My world operates by different rules. Rules that allow hurting people? Rules that protect my family at any cost." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "If you cannot accept that, perhaps your time in this house should come to an end." The thought of never returning, of never seeing Sophia again, hit me with unexpected force. "You'd do that to her? End our friendship because I dared to question you?" Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, perhaps, that I would challenge him so directly. "No," he said after a moment. "I wouldn't do that to her." His eyes held mine. "Or to you." Before I could decipher what he meant, Sophia called from the art room. "Lena, I'm ready." Vincent stepped back, the tension between us still crackling in the air. "Go. She's waiting." The rest of the day passed in a strained facsimile of our usual visits. Vincent was distant, responding to Sophia's chatter with distracted smiles, his attention frequently drawn to his phone. I caught him watching me when he thought I wouldn't notice, his expression unreadable. When it was time for me to leave, Sophia hugged me tightly, as if sensing the discord between the adults. "You'll come back next Sunday, right?" she asked, her eyes searching mine. I glanced at Vincent, who stood a few paces behind his daughter. "If your father invites me," I said carefully. "Papa?" Sophia turned to him, her expression pleading. Vincent's gaze moved from his daughter to me, something complex and unresolved passing through his eyes. "Of course," he said finally. Lena is always welcome here. The week that followed was one of the most difficult of my semester, a major exam, extra shifts at the diner to cover for a sick colleague, a paper due that I had barely started. I was running on caffeine and determination, my mind so focused on survival that I had little energy to contemplate the increasingly complicated situation with the Russos. Then came Friday night. I was walking home from a late shift at the diner, the street dark except for the occasional flickering streetlight. My feet ached, my brain was foggy with exhaustion, and all I could think about was falling into bed for a few precious hours of sleep before my morning class. I didn't notice the three men until they stepped out of the shadows half a block from my apartment building. Young, hard-faced, with the swagger of those who believe the streets belong to them. I clutched my bag tighter and quickened my pace, keeping my eyes forward. "Hey, pretty lady," one called. "Where are you going so fast?" I ignored him, focusing on the entrance to my building now just yards away. "I'm talking to you," he said, stepping directly into my path. His breath reeked of alcohol, his pupils dilated from something stronger. "I need to get home," I said firmly, trying to step around him. He moved with me, blocking my way again. His two friends circled behind me, cutting off my retreat. "Maybe we could keep you company." Fear coiled in my stomach, but I kept my voice steady. "No, thank you. Please let me pass." The man reached out, his fingers brushing my cheek. So polite. I like that. I jerked away from his touch, only to bump into one of his friends behind me. Hands gripped my arms, holding me in place as the first man leaned closer. "Let's see what you got in that bag," he said, reaching for my purse. A sleek black car screeched to a halt at the curb, its tinted windows reflecting the streetlight. The three men froze, their attention drawn to the vehicle as its rear door swung open. Vincent Russo emerged, his movements fluid and controlled, his expression coldly furious. Behind him came two of his men, their stances broadcasting lethal capability. "Let her go," Vincent said, his voice so soft I barely heard it. The hands gripping my arms released immediately, their owners backing away. The leader wasn't quite as quick to recognize the danger. "Who the fuck are you?" he demanded. Though his bravado was already crumbling under Vincent's glacial stare, Vincent didn't answer. He simply nodded to one of his men, who stepped forward and whispered something in the leader's ear. The color drained from the young man's face. "Mr. Russo, I didn't know. She's not marked. We wouldn't have—" "Go," Vincent interrupted, his contempt palpable. "Now. And understand that this woman is under my protection. If you or anyone touches her, if she feels even a moment's unease walking these streets, I will know. And I will respond accordingly." The three men fled, practically falling over themselves in their haste to disappear. Vincent turned to me, his eyes sweeping over my body as if checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, still processing what had just happened. "What are you doing here?" "Ensuring your safety, apparently." He gestured toward my building. "Let's get you inside." Too shaken to argue, I led him up the stairs to my apartment. Only as I unlocked the door did the strangeness of the situation fully register. Vincent Russo, in his tailored suit and Italian leather shoes, entering my shabby one-room apartment for the second time. "You didn't answer my question," I said, setting down my purse with hands that still trembled slightly. "Why are you here? How did you know where I was?" Vincent moved to my window, looking down at the street where his car and men waited. "I came to discuss Sunday. Sophia has a recital she wants you to attend." He turned to face me. "As for your location, I always know where you are, Lena." The admission should have frightened me. Instead, I felt an unsettling mix of indignation and something that felt dangerously like security. "You have me followed?" "I have you protected," he corrected. A decision that proved prescient tonight. I sank onto the edge of my futon. "I don't understand any of this. What am I to you, Vincent? Why am I in your life?" He was silent for a long moment, his expression thoughtful as he studied me. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter than I had ever heard it. "You are the woman who found my daughter and asked for nothing in return. You are the woman who makes Sophia laugh and helps her see beyond the boundaries of our world." He took a step closer. You are the woman who challenges me when no one else dares. That doesn't explain the protection, the money, the texts. I gestured around my small apartment. All of this. Attention. Vincent moved to stand before me, close enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his gaze. Doesn't it? Understanding dawned, bringing with it a rush of conflicting emotions. Fear, confusion, and something else. Something I had been fighting against acknowledging for weeks. Vincent, I began, not sure what I was going to say. He reached down, his fingers brushing mine where they rested on the futon. Sophia adores you, he said softly, and I find that I have come to value your presence in our lives. Value, I repeated, the word simultaneously too much and not enough. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. I am not a man accustomed to uncertainty, Lena. Yet with you, I find myself unsure of my next step. The admission of vulnerability from this powerful, dangerous man made my heart stutter in my chest. I'm not part of your world, I reminded him, and myself. No, he agreed. You are something separate. Something... He seemed to search for the right word. Pure. I laughed softly, the sound edged with disbelief. I'm hardly pure, Vincent. Compared to me? His eyes held mine. You are light itself. He stepped back, breaking the moment of intensity between us. The car will come on Sunday at the usual time. Sophia's recital is at 11. I nodded, unable to find words. Vincent moved to the door, pausing with his hand on the knob. And Lena? You will never walk these streets alone again. My men will ensure your safety, whether you see them or not. It wasn't a request, but this time, I found I didn't mind. After he left, I stood at my window watching his car pull away, my thoughts a tangled mess. What was happening between us? Was I truly considering a deeper involvement with Vincent Russo? And what would that mean for my carefully constructed life? My plans? My future? I thought of Sophia's bright smile, of Vincent's eyes when he looked at his daughter. I thought of the violence evident in his bruised face, of the power he wielded with such casual authority. I thought of how safe I had felt when he appeared tonight, and how terrifying that feeling was. I had found a lost child in an alley and helped her home. Now I was lost myself, caught between two worlds, unsure which path to take. But as I crawled into bed that night, exhausted yet strangely alive, I realized I had already made my choice. For better or worse, I would be in that car on Sunday. I would attend Sophia's recital. I would take another step into Vincent Russo's world. And perhaps, just perhaps, I would bring a bit of my world into